It was a quiet night when a young man knocked on the door of a philosopher's study. He wasn't there to learn politely or sit in quiet admiration. He was frustrated, even angry. For a long time, he had carried a belief that weighed on him like a stone. His life had been ruined by his past, and there was nothing he could do to change it. As soon as he entered the room, he didn't bother with greetings. He blurted out his thoughts as if he'd been holding them in for years. "People can't change," he said firmly. "It doesn't matter what we want. Our lives are already shaped by the past." A boy who is bullied grows into a timid man. A girl who never felt loved grows into a bitter woman. That's how life works. We are prisoners of what we've been through. The philosopher didn't react with shock or anger. He simply smiled, as though he had heard this many times before. "So you believe your past is the master of your life?" he asked gently. "Of course," the young man snapped. "Isn't it obvious? Look around. People are the way they are because of what happened to them. If your childhood was miserable, your future will be too. There's no escaping it." The philosopher leaned forward. "Let me ask you something. Do you think every child who grows up in poverty will remain poor? Do you think every child who loses their parents will never find happiness? Life is full of people who faced hardship yet found different paths. Why is that?" The young man frowned, but the philosopher didn't wait for an answer. "You see, there are two ways to explain human behavior. Freud's way and Adler's way. Freud would agree with you. He believed people are driven by their past. If you're anxious today, it's because something long ago scarred you. You're like a cart being pushed from behind by a horse. You move forward, but only because the past drives you." Adler, however, saw something different. He said people are not pushed by the past. They are pulled by the goals they set right now. Your life is guided not by what happened yesterday, but by what purpose you choose today. The young man shook his head. "That makes no sense. If someone hides away in his room, afraid of people, of course it's because of trauma. Something must have scarred him." The philosopher smiled again, patient. "Imagine that man. He refuses to step outside. Freud would say it's because of his painful childhood." Adler would ask instead, what purpose is he serving by staying in? Maybe he's afraid of rejection. Maybe he doesn't want to fail. By choosing fear, he has found an excuse to stay where he feels safe. Do you see the difference? He isn't chained by the past. He is choosing right now to use fear as a way to avoid life. The young man leaned forward, almost angry. "So you're saying people choose to suffer? That they actually want to be miserable?" "Not quite," the philosopher said calmly. "It isn't that people want misery. It's that misery can serve a purpose. It can protect them from risk, from responsibility, from trying something new. Think about a student who says, 'I can't study because I'm lazy.' Maybe it's not really laziness. Maybe it's fear of failure. If she doesn't study, then she has an excuse. 'I failed because I didn't try,' rather than facing the scarier truth of failing even when she did her best. That's the difference between blaming the past and choosing the present." The young man was quiet now, but his eyes burned with resistance. "So you're telling me it's all my fault? That I'm to blame for how I feel, for everything wrong in my life?" The philosopher shook his head. "Not blame, responsibility. Those are not the same thing. Blame is about punishment. Responsibility is about freedom. If you say, 'I am the way I am because of my past,' then you give up. You tell yourself nothing can change. But if you see that you're choosing your actions, even if you didn't realize it, then suddenly change becomes possible. You are not just a victim. You are the author of what comes next." The young man sank back in his chair. His anger had softened into confusion. He whispered, almost to himself, "So maybe it's not that I couldn't change. Maybe I just didn't want to." The philosopher nodded gently. "Yes, and once you see that, you are no longer trapped. The moment you realize your chains are of your own making, You also realize you have the power to break them. That is where freedom begins. The room was quiet. The young man's mind raced. He thought of times he had blamed his past. The family that didn't understand him. The teachers who had ignored him. The moments he had said, "Because of that, my life is ruined." Had he been using all of it as an excuse? The philosopher's voice broke through his thoughts. This realization is not easy, because once you accept it, you can no longer hide behind excuses. You can no longer say, "I can't because of my past." Now you must face the truth that you are choosing your life in every moment. And choosing also means taking risks that not everyone will like. The young man looked up, curious. Risks? What do you mean? To live freely, the philosopher explained, is to live according to your choices, not according to what others expect. But the moment you do this, you will face disapproval. Not everyone will like you. Some will criticize. Some will walk away. That is why Adler called this freedom the courage to be disliked. Because it takes courage to live honestly, knowing you will not be approved of by everyone. The young man lowered his gaze. Part of him still resisted. Blaming the past was painful, but it was comfortable. If he let it go, then he had no shield. He would have to step forward into a world where his choices and his failures were his own. That thought frightened him, and yet, somewhere deep inside, he felt lighter, as if a heavy chain he had carried all his life had suddenly loosened. He thought, if my life is not tied to my past, then I'm free to shape it now. If my suffering is not destiny, then maybe happiness is within reach. Maybe I don't have to wait. Maybe I can choose it today. The philosopher sat back, smiling quietly, as if he could see the young man's thoughts unfolding. And in that study, on that quiet night, something began to change. Not a dramatic transformation, not a sudden burst of joy. Just a seed, a new way of thinking. A seed that whispered, freedom doesn't come from rewriting the past. It comes from shaping the present. Happiness isn't something given to you. It's something you decide to create, and the first step is simply the courage to be disliked.